Welcome to the Vikings Now. I am your host, Patrick Seatman, doing an at-home mailbag for you guys today, where I'm taking your questions off the recent Vikings community posts and Vikings videos, and I'm going to be answering them going into this big-time Monday Night Football game versus the Philadelphia Eagles. For a Week 2 matchup, it is filled with playoff implications. So I got a little injury news in here. I got some, I guess, analysis going into the game. But before we get into your guys' questions, go down and hit that subscribe button. I asked you guys to hit that subscribe button last week before the Packers game. You guys did. You guys crushed it, and we ended up winning. Could we get the same momentum going into the Eagles game? You don't want to be sitting there thinking like, God, did I jinx the Vikings by not hitting that subscribe button on that one kid's video? But go down there, hit the subscribe button. But now let's get into the Minnesota Vikings mailbag. All right, so this one's coming in from SkullFan333. Shout out to you for asking this question. He said, what's the latest with our rookies, Andrew Booth Jr. and Lewis Cine? So great question. So Andrew Booth Jr., he was actually just ruled out for the Eagles Monday night game with a quad injury. He's been very limited and not practicing throughout the entire week. Kind of expected that he wasn't going to play. But then Lewis Cine, he is actually set to make his NFL debut Monday night. He was a full participant all week in practice, so the injury scare in week 1, kind of throw it out the window. He seems like he's back and ready to go. Super excited to see Cine make his debut. Also, a Caleb Evans filling in for Andrew Booth Jr. Something to watch out for. 4th rounder out of Missouri in this past Vikings draft class. I'm super high on a Caleb Evans. I think he's a really physical corner. I think he brings that dog tenacity type of mentality to the cornerback room. So I'm excited to see how he will kind of step in his first kind of real reps as a Minnesota Viking. Next question coming in from Mike Will. He's talking about Jalen Reagor right now. He goes, do you think Jalen Reagor will get his revenge versus the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, this is something I mentioned in my game preview on the Jalen Reagor revenge game. Yes, there is that narrative. He was drafted 21st overall when Jefferson was drafted 22nd. He had not like a toxic career relationship with Philadelphia, but it definitely did not go how he's planned. And obviously him being with the Vikings now, and now this is his first game returning to Philadelphia, the revenge game is there. So I think Jalen Reagor, obviously revenge is on his mind. He had quotes coming out earlier this week saying, yes, of course, I want to go in there and have a game. But my dream prediction and my dream scenario of what's going to happen on Monday night, I said this in my preview, I want it to be 4th quarter. The Philly fans are super excited. The Vikings are up 7. The Vikings just got to stop on Jalen Hurts. They're punting the ball back to Jalen Reagor. House call, punt return for touchdown to ice the game. That would be my dream prediction for Jalen Reagor. Now, also just kind of a more realistic prediction. I do think Kevin O'Connell has a play set for Jalen Reagor. Whether the Vikings will execute it or not, I do think Kevin O'Connell has a deep shot, maybe him on a deep post coming out on the back end or something like that. Because I do think if you're a head coach and you're like, you know what, this is a pretty big game for this certain player on my team. Let's see if I could get him a sneaky touchdown. Let's see if I could get him a sneaky play that kind of boosts the morale in the locker room. So I'm very curious to see how Kevin O'Connell will handle this kind of revenge game narrative. I want to ask you guys this question, though. Does Jalen Reagor score a touchdown on Monday night? I'll have this as the pinned comment down below. Type Y for yes, type N for no. Do you think Jalen Reagor will get his revenge Monday night and score a touchdown? Next question coming in from Skull Nation. He says, what is your biggest concern for the Vikings-Eagles game? My biggest concern is probably going to be the interior of our Vikings offensive line. If we're going to nitpick on one guy, it's going to be Garrett Bradbury. The Eagles have a loaded defensive front. I mean, we know the big names like Fletcher Cox and Deron Hargrave, but then you also got the rookie Jordan Davis coming out of Georgia, who he's a monster. He had a great PFF grade last week, and he looked great all preseason, and he's just a big physical dude that anchors down that Eagles defense. So I do think, yes, if there was a concern I'm looking at on this Vikings roster matching up with the Eagles roster, it's that interior of our offensive line. And we all know no quarterback in the NFL handles interior pressure well, but especially Kirk Cousins, especially the guys that are built like Kirk, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, where they're not the most mobile guy. That interior pressure really seems to affect them more than others. So my biggest concern, I think it's Garrett Bradbury. I think this is also a big-time game for Bradbury because if you look on the other side of it, this could be a prove-it game. This could be a silence your critics type of night game for Garrett Bradbury. So I'd be thrilled. He goes out there, proves himself against a really good Eagles front. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. But my biggest concern when it comes to game-wrecking the game is that Eagles defensive front. I think they have a chance to game wreck it. And I wonder if Kevin O'Connell, how he'll play it, if he'll leave Bradbury one-on-one with Fletcher Cox or if he'll get some help. I'm not sure. I just know Kevin O'Connell, he's got to have a game plan for this because I don't think he will leave him one-on-one with Fletcher Cox and Ed Ingram, our rookie, one-on-one with Jordan Davis. I think it's going to be a lot of double teams moving up to the second level. We'll have to see how Kevin O'Connell handles it, but that is my biggest concern. Next question coming in from How You Like That. He says, do you think Jefferson realistically has a chance at the Triple Crown? So the Triple Crown, if you guys don't know, is a league leader in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Jefferson's off to a pretty good start. He had 9 receptions, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns last week. Cooper Kupp coming off him having the Triple Crown last year. Do I think he has a realistic shot? Of course he has a realistic shot. Would I bet on it? No. I'm all in on Jefferson. I think he's top 2 and not 2 receivers in the NFL, but winning Triple Crown is damn hard. And honestly, I don't think he'll get the receptions. I think Jefferson could easily lead in yards and touchdowns, but the receptions, I'm not sure. We have a lot of mouths to feed here in Minnesota. I know Jefferson got mainly all of the receptions, I guess you could say, last week against Green Bay, but I do think KJ and Thielen, they'll have their games. And I do think, you still have guys like Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams. There are still some really, really good receivers in the NFL that could take that Triple Crown nod away from him. Realistically, though, he has a chance. Of course he does. He's running the Cooper Kupp role in this Kevin O'Connell offense when he just won it last year with Sean McVay. So I definitely do think he has a chance. Last question coming in here from Moss Too Deep. Will Kirk Cousins end the primetime narratives this year? So primetime Kirk Cousins narratives is something that's kind of bothered me for a long time. I think there is some truth to it that Kirk doesn't play his best game in primetime games and that Monday night record of him being 2-9. But I saw this stat floating around on the Vikings Twitter sphere. Kirk Cousins, his defenses average giving up 29.4 points per game in primetime games. That's incredible. That is so, the average, I would probably say, if for most quarterbacks, is sitting around that 20 range. Kirk is around 29 points per game given up by his defense. Just the fact that he has to overcome that in most primetime games obviously says a lot to his record when people just say, oh, Kirk's 15 games below 500 in primetime. There's context to everything. But I do think Kirk, with the support system Kevin O'Connell is giving him, I do think he'll win more primetime games this year. I just don't think I honestly don't think it will be a narrative this year. I don't think it's going to be talked about too much on Monday night with Aikman and Buck. I think they'll probably mention it, saying, yeah, Kirk always has that Monday night narrative, but he did win his last 2 Monday night games in Chicago. I think the narrative is going to be gone after this Monday if the Vikings go out and get a win, and I just don't really think it's going to be talked about. I think the media, it's kind of been a strung out narrative because there's so much context with this Kirk Cousins primetime or losing in primetime narrative. I think Kirk's a great quarterback. I think he's going to show out and shut up a lot of critics on Monday night against this really good Eagles defense. I think he's going to have a great game. And honestly, first time in a while, going into a primetime game on the road against a really, really good team, I'm feeling confident. And that's all credit to our head coach and our coaching staff. But anyways, thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. If you did, you're a real one. Type real one down below. If you're excited for the Vikings to get going Monday night, we're bringing the Skulls to Philadelphia. Type Skull down below if you are excited. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me on this mailbag. Skull Vikes.